Hi everyone, I'm Rena Ninan. 5 years ago, a gunman walked into Sandy Hook Elementary in Newtown, Connecticut and opened fire. The shooting, carried out by a young man with a history of untreated mental difficulties, left 20 children, 6 staff members dead. The massacre became a moment of reflection in America about guns and gun violence. Early cries to ban assault-style rifles and reform gun access quieted just a few months later. In the end, the most enduring change was to Newtown. The loss of 26 people, all from the same community, was felt across New England. Nationally, it left parents with the uneasy feeling that even at school, their children were no longer safe. As for the effect that the shooting had on gun ownership, research by the journal Science found gun sales spiked. An estimated 3 million firearms were purchased in the months after the shooting. And since Sandy Hook, more than 1,700 people have died and more than 6,000 injured in over 1,500 mass shootings nationwide. Each shooting its own distinct, painful national tragedy. Less than a year after Sandy Hook, on September 16, 2013, 12 people were killed at the Washington, D.C. Navy Yard. The killer, a government contractor working on computers, suffered from mental delusions. He bought the shotgun he used one day after he was reprimanded for an undisclosed performance issue. December 2, 2015, in San Bernardino, California, a husband and wife, in an act of terror, murdered 14 and injured 20 others. Their rampage only stopped by a gunfight with police, who killed the couple. They may have been planning more attacks. In 2016, another terror attack carried out with an assault-style rifle by a man who consumed radicalized terror material online. In the early morning hours of June 12th, he walked into a nightclub frequented by members of the LGBTQ community and opened fire. 49 people killed. It was the deadliest shooting in modern U.S. history in the United States. The gruesome record would stand just over a year when a gunman armed with more than 30 weapons rained gunfire down on tens of thousands of concertgoers in Las Vegas. The motive, carried out by a single man, remains unclear. And just over a month ago, 25 people, one of them pregnant, were gunned down as they packed a small church in Sutherland Springs, Texas. The shooter, kicked out of the Navy, who had a history of mental illness, including threats against his former base, was barred from purchasing the weapons, but was not added to the background check register. In light of the spate of mass shootings in this country, we wanted to have a conversation about it. We went to Colorado Springs, an hour south of Denver, to help foster conversations between pairs of people on different sides of this deeply contentious debate. Over the next hour, we'll hear 4 conversations about guns. Some participants knew each other ahead of time, but most did not. Some of the discussions grew heated, others found unexpected common ground. We began with Daniel and Jessica, both parents of young children, who came to the table with opposing political views and very different opinions about gun rights and gun control.
Let's start by saying, do you own a gun?
Yes.
I do not, no.
Have you fired a gun?
Yes.
Yes. Many times.
What do you think of when you think of guns?
I think of sport. I think of entertainment. I think of safety. I think guns have a wide range of uses. Not everybody's crazy when they get a gun, so.
Unfortunately, because of recent events, violence comes to mind initially, but I do also understand that they're there for safety and defense, and I do think it's fun to shoot, and I enjoy it very much.
If I say gun control to you, what does that mean?
I say good luck. I don't think there's a foolproof way of doing it, which is unfortunate. Las Vegas, going all the way back to Columbine when I was in middle school, all those things are tragedies. How do you stop it without totally taking them away? And I would definitely never want them totally taken away.
My thoughts are that it needs to be more stringent. I would liken it to perhaps the necessity of getting a pilot's license before you operate an airplane. You have a lot of people's lives in your hands. It's a dangerous, piece of machinery. Everyone has a personal responsibility upon themselves to own guns in a reasonable manner, in an ethical manner that doesn't threaten the lives of our children.
How do you do that?
I would think that stricter
curious.
regulations, and I think perhaps forcing people to go through a lot more safety training would resolve a lot of the violence issues. There's no harm in forcing someone to learn more about their sport when there is a harm in just letting everyone have a gun indiscriminately.
But if somebody's out to do that, they're going to go through the classes as it is anyways.
Sure, and I don't disagree. And actually, it's maybe not a popular opinion, but I think there needs to be more training for the general public around the issue of gun violence and mass shootings. If we were to train people to have a mentality similar to being on an airplane, if someone comes into a room with a gun, we all need to be on the same page of knowing what we're going to do and how we're going to handle that, and absolutely attacking that person with everything we possibly can. It needs to be that same mentality of we're 30,000 feet in the air and you're not opening that door.
I would say that that's a good thing. I would lean more that way than I would towards, and I'm not against it, more gun training for somebody who buys a gun, because I don't care what country you're in. If you want a gun, you can get one illegally, and no training is going to stop anybody from doing that.
You're in favor of people owning guns. Does that have limitations with assault rifles or certain types of weapons?
I don't know what I would ever do with a 50 caliber gun. I have zero idea what I would do with a 50 caliber gun. But an AR-15, if you want to go out and have fun with that, I don't have a problem with it. Do I think you need a 100-round clip? Probably not. Probably be fun to shoot, but maybe at a shooting range. I don't think that's something that everybody needs to go do. So should there be a ban on assault rifles? No. I'm okay with magazines being limited.
I think that's good. I would agree with that 100%.
So you would be okay with assault rifle ownership as well?
To an extent. I mean, personally, I don't understand the reason that a private citizen would need to own an assault rifle. However, it's also not necessarily for me to say. So I think that limitations on things like the bump stocks and, magazine clips being readily available would be a fair compromise. I have a question for you, actually, and I want to understand, when you're carrying, I don't know if you open carry or I think you said concealed carry, but do you ever consider what another person's perspective might be of you if they realize that you're carrying and how it makes them feel?
That's...
Does it make you feel as though you perhaps pose a threat to them? Do you ever consider that perspective?
But if I conceal and you don't know...
Sure, but well, I mean, so it would have to be a unique situation where they see, your waistband.
So even for me, Colorado being the open state that it is, I get uncomfortable at the sight of somebody open carrying, because I feel like I don't know their mentality. I guess I would feel safer with somebody who's concealed carrying and just keeping to themselves. With open carry, I think one, why do you feel the need to open carry?
Seems to instill a sense of bravado that I don't understand.
To me, because I've never seen a woman open carry. It always seems to be a guy that open carries. Okay, what are you trying to prove? I have
Feels
nothing.
aggressive.
Yeah, I don't think anybody needs to have an open carry. I'm not going to take that right away from anybody. I don't see the point behind it, I guess.
I agree. I think it heightens situations awkwardly. It escalates things where you're suddenly very aware that there is someone in the room with a gun.
Because if you were standing next to me and you were standing next to somebody that was open carrying, they're the threat. Now, in my head, I'm saying they're the threat too, possibly. Meanwhile, nobody's looking at me as the threat.
That's true. That's a good point.
It's a very interesting go around.
It's a unique way to look at it.
This week is the 5-year anniversary of Sandy Hook. Do you guys remember where you were when you heard about that shooting and what your reaction was?
I feel like that was a really big turning point for America, in my opinion, in that not providing any substantive legislation after that point, in my mind, made it okay that these kids died. No one seemed to care. I mean, if our most innocent and vulnerable population is not being protected a little bit better, and there's not going to be some move towards let's rethink our position, it's never going to matter.
I was newly married, obviously, didn't have a kid at the time, and I didn't understand the mentality of it. Now I have a kid, and I couldn't imagine what those families went through, and how do you prevent that tragedy, and how do you stop that? I wish I had an answer for that.
I got an email a couple of weeks ago that my daughter was participating in active shooter drills, and they were teaching them to hide. So they wanted to alert the parents in case the kids came home and talked about, we hid from Miss Melissa today. And I just found it so disheartening, and honestly, it made me really angry, and I felt like someone's right to own a piece of metal was infringing on my child's right to live. It frustrates me immensely that we have to have those. And I feel like Newtown was the big turning point for that.
When I went to school, it was fire drills and tornado drills, and unfortunately now it's hide from Miss Melissa. You know, it's kind of back to when kids used to have to hide under the desk in case there was a bombing or something, you know. It is the world as it is, and I'd rather have my daughter, when she gets to that point, be prepared. It sucks. I'm never going to disagree with that, but I'd rather have her know than not know and
Sure, I agree.
be open to it.
Why is this issue so hard to address? I mean, you two have different opinions about guns, but you're sitting here and talking about it. Why isn't this something we see on a higher level in this country?
People go so far in the extremes, either direction of we need to get rid of every single gun that's ever existed and no one should ever own one again, or everyone should be armed with an AR-15. I think there has to be a middle ground that's reasonable, that meets everyone's needs, and comes to a place of genuine understanding and compromise of, I don't necessarily want to own an AR-15, but if you do, I need to understand that, and I need to find a framework where that is reasonable, fair, ethical, and responsible for you to do so. In my mind, ideally, yeah, there wouldn't be any guns, but that's not ever going to happen. That's not the way that it needs to be realistically, and I think meeting each other halfway, because life is way more complex than these blanket statements of there should or there should not be guns.
Right. You know, I think everybody is so, if you're not with me, you're against me. They're offended if you have a different opinion, which I don't understand. If my wife and I disagree on something, we deal with it. If some of my friends, if we have disagreements, you deal with it. And I don't understand why everybody's so polarized. Everybody just needs to calm down and have a conversation. And compromise is key. Okay, you want to have an AR-15? Maybe you don't have a bump stock and 100 rounds. I'd be okay with that.